And we're live. Yeah, so we're back with another episode of SEO Career Mastery. Unfortunately, I missed last week, but yeah, we're back with Vicky Simmance. So Vicky is the Operations and Events Director at OMG.center. She has over 6 years experience as an operations director, Vicky, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So, apart from obviously Chris's amazing personality, what made you end up signing with him and starting up at the OMG.center?
That's a bit of a leading question, Darius. No, so yeah, actually, so now I've been working with Chris at the OMG.center now for 3 months. Sorry, I'll take some water. So yeah, we've only been working together for 3 months, but actually prior to that, a few years ago, we actually ran a couple of digital agencies together. So in terms of what's happened really over the last few years, so we, as I say, we ran a couple of digital agencies together a few years ago. So that's where Chris, basically, that's where his experience comes from as a coach. After that, he was like, after a couple of years or a few years, he was like, actually, I want to move from running the agency to doing the coaching. Which is where he started off doing coaching on his own. The OMG.center evolved from that. And actually, so what I ended up doing, because I was operations director in those agencies. So that's where I actually ended up going to work with other agencies, which was a great experience because I'd only really worked with our own before. So over the last couple of years, I worked across several different agencies, medium-sized, lots of different people, very different agencies, which is great. And then, yeah, basically, Chris, the OMG.center now officially has been running since September. But I think Chris has been working on it for about a year, 18 months. So it's been a while. But earlier this year, he was like, actually, I really want to accelerate the growth of the agency. So that's where basically put together a job description for me and had to do a proper interview on both sides. But yeah, and then we were
I was going to say, was there a bidding war, if I remember correctly, that Chris had to end up getting into?
Exactly, yeah. So actually, yeah, I was like looking at a couple of options, but I mean, the good thing is, like, as I say, we did actually do it properly. You know, we talked about exactly what the role would be. Because obviously my experience is operations, but this is the OMG.center is slightly different to an agency. Obviously, we're a very small team. We're all about working with coaches and partners and basically supporting agencies. But from my point of view, that was great because I was like, actually, I've got these experience in operations, project management, which I can definitely apply to this role. It's a bit different. And also the thing that really interested me was the events part of it, because I'm actually operations and events director. So I was speaking a bit earlier to you guys, but for me, the events part is something I've had experience in, but not as much. But because of what OMG is, that's such a core part of the brand, is running events. And we've got one coming up in October, which I'll talk about shortly. But yeah, so for me, I was like, this is great because it's using my skill set. It's doing something slightly different, but it's in an industry that I'm now familiar with. I know people, I love to network, and I get to do the events part of it. So from my point of view, that's what it was. I was like, it's great. And actually, Chris and I do actually work quite well together. Well, very well, actually, because he's all visionary and I'm the implementer. So he'll come up with these crazy I dare say that. You know, some of them are great, some of them are like need a bit of tweaking. But yeah, we work together well because he's all about, this is the vision, this is the strategy, and I'm the implementer. So I make sure we get stuff done.
Good fit then, good fit.
Brilliant.
Vicky, what does a day in the life of Vicky Simmance at the OMG.center look like as an operational director?
Good question. So it's quite busy. It's productive. But yeah, so yeah, in terms of my role, it's different to what I was doing in agency, obviously, because we have got a team, but it's a small team. So yeah, I think in terms of my day-to-day, I'll have my daily stand-up with the team, as I normally would. So make sure you know what people are doing, make sure everything's on track. And then from there, it's calls throughout the day intermittently. So things like we've got a lot of partners that work with the OMG.center. And when I say partners, they're people that support digital agencies. So, for example, we've got people who do software, people who you can outsource link building to, you know, lots of different types of partners. And then we've also got coaches as well. So we've got 10 agency advisors in the OMG.center. So it's working with those coaches and partners. And when I say working with them, so they'll be writing content for the website, for example. We'll be doing promotional stuff with them. So, for example, we're doing an article about what the future of the digital agencies hold. So I've been working with people and speaking to them about that. And it's a lot of planning from a social perspective. Speaking to coaches, partners, but then also the events planning as well, which we've got coming up in October. So that's now at a point where I'm trying to pull everything together in terms of what the plan is. And then also we're actually just rebuilding the website, which is going to go live next week. So in terms of a typical day, it obviously does depend on, where we are in the cycle, as it were, but it's very much a lot of project management, making sure the team are on track, making sure Chris is on track, and just speaking to people and trying to keep things moving along, basically.
I love the way Chris has his own category for being on track. There's the team and then Chris.
Managing. But yeah, so I think that's what I love about it, though. It is very varied, and it's different to what I was doing before as well, because before it was very much working with team and directly with clients, because that's the other thing. We do still have we've had a couple of clients from SEO, which actually we're starting to move away from that now. But yeah, very much previous to this, it's been managing team, it's been managing clients. But saying that, there's still a lot of skills that overlap, and I've been able to use that in this role. So it's different, but there's still a lot of similarities.
Brilliant. And I know you mentioned a few sort of goals with obviously the new website being launched, events and all come up as well. But is there anything sort of a personal goal for yourself that you sort of saw whenever you first joined OMG.center? You're like, I want to improve this, or I want to take this in a certain direction.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me is the events part, actually. Just because I think I love the operational bit, and I think that's the bit I enjoy. I'm good at it, and I think this is where the other thing as well. I think with this role as well, I'm always so actually my background was originally market research, which sounds a bit odd, but actually again there were a lot of skills that I was able to bring over, and I've developed those over the last 6 years. So I think for me, it's the events part, because obviously events, they involve a lot of organisation, they involve a lot of talking to people. You've got to network, you've got to work out what what's going to bring people in, how's it going to work. So for me, I've been spending a lot of time looking at what other events are doing, speaking to people who've run them, and then trying to figure out, okay, because this is what they've done, this is what they've said work, this is what I can see people are doing, but what's actually going to work for our brand? What is it we need to do? And so I think for me, over the next year, it's about, we've got the one coming up for October, which is like an evening meetup. But then next year, we do want to look at doing like a proper day conference. So there's going to be a lot of work involved, particularly on my behalf, to sort of get us from there. So for my objective really is focusing on that part, because I can see how it works, but I think with a lot of things, like we all know, it's good to know the theory, but you need to actually do it, and you need to learn from your mistakes as you go. And so yeah, I think for me, that's the big thing over the next year, is actually how do we scale this into a bigger thing and make it, known for events, and people, they look forward to it, they want to come, they want to, they're going to learn from it. So yeah, so it's quite a very broad, big objective, but yeah, it'll be good.
No, fingers crossed it goes well.
Speaking on learning from mistakes, has there been an sort of specific event, maybe not necessarily in the OMG.center's lifespan, but in your career, where you needed to manage a team and something went incredibly off track, or against what the plan was, and how did you sort of get the team back on track? So how did you manage to strategize around that? Do you recall anything?
I think that's a good question. I think it's probably less about perhaps one big mess up, as it were, or one big issue. It's more about the times when I've been working with agencies, because I actually did freelance for a bit as well. And I think the thing that struck me is when you go into an agency, teams, they work very differently, and obviously they deliver different services. You've got different types of people. You know, they're using different, I mean, I say project management system, I use that very loosely in some ways.
Yeah.
But people have very different ways of wanting to work, or the way they need to deliver. And I think the thing that surprised me actually is you assume when you go into an agency, everything's going to be like, you know, it's an agency, everything will be fine, like they'll have processes and stuff. And actually, a lot of the time, I think people, they work with what they've had. It's something that's maybe evolved over time, but it's not working. And so for me, I think rather than there being a big issue, I've had to address it, has been more going into business and being like, right, this is what's happening at the moment. Speaking to the leadership team, speaking to the team and understanding, you know, how are you working day to day? What's working? What isn't? What's your bugbear? Because then this is where it's like looking at it and being like, is it the project management system we're using, do you have one, or is it not working for you guys? You know, communications in place, because, you know, things like, you know, daily stand-ups, for example, might not be people's favorite thing in the world, but, you know, it's having some regular communication. You know, things are going to stay on track, people can raise issues, and then also just things like measuring profitability, because that's the other thing, is you might be doing all this great work for clients, you know, things are getting sent, but actually, is it profitable? Yeah, I think for me, that's been the very interesting bit, because some of it I had to go on experience, but honestly, some of it was trying to work it out in terms of either trying to work it out as I went along, or again, speaking to people. Yeah, so it's very, I think that's the thing that I found. I was, it probably sounds obvious, but I was quite surprised how different agencies are in terms of how they work. So, and that's something that, and then that's fine. But it's more understanding that and thinking about how you're going to move them forward.
And sorry, just to build off of that, loosely using project management tools, do you have any sort of favorite go-tos that you like to use?
I do. So I always say to people, like, there's so many tools out there, like, to pick from. And I think what's interesting, actually, when you speak to people, everyone has their preference, which again is understandable, because it depends on your team size. It depends on what your niche is. So I get that. I mean, I'm personally a big fan of ClickUp.
Nice.
I don't know if you guys are familiar with it.
Yeah, we love it.
I have been saying that I've used Monday.com, so that's one I've used a lot in the past. And actually, it's interesting, because when I speak to people, there's still a lot of people that are a big fan of that. And to be fair, I understand why, because Monday is great in terms of, like, you know, they've got dashboards in there. You can, if you work with a lot of people outside of your organization as well, I found that really useful. And again, something like Asana, use that in the past. I'd say all of the ones I've mentioned, like, they're the ones I've probably used the most. All of them have got a nice client interface, simple to use, lots of integrations. But I think personally, I like ClickUp because it's like Asana and Monday had a baby.
Awesome.
And it's sort of got the best of both, if you like. So if anyone wanted somewhere to start, I'd probably recommend that. But yeah.
Definitely a fan favorite. Yeah, Jay?
Yeah.
Vicky, I'm just going to go a bit off topic here. I want to talk a bit about public speaking, because me and Dars obviously done it for the first time at our event, and I'm not going to lie, it was the most nervous I've ever been for anything. And obviously you do podcasts and public speaking. Would you have any tips for someone that's maybe done it once or is going to do it for the first time, and how to do it? Because I remember walking up stage, I was shaking, and if someone asked me why I spoke about on stage, I can't remember. I just blacked out.
No, and firstly, I do want to say I'm sad I missed it, because Chris said you guys did a great job. So first off, well done. Like, yeah, because it's not easy. And honestly, the truth is, I only properly. So actually, I used to do speaking when I was in market research, but that was more to, like, clients. So actually, I only started doing industry speaking in October last year.
Really?
So yeah, so it's relatively recent, to be honest. And I think what it was is that whole thing around where you feel, imposter syndrome, and you're like, I don't know enough about this, and no one's interested. And to be honest, and so actually what I did, and I'm sorry, Jay, I will answer your question in a minute.
No, of course.
So yeah, I mean, to that point, actually, I think it was a lot of people had said, like Chris had said to me in the past, like, oh, you should do speaking and stuff. And I'm like, oh, no one wants to hear what I'm saying. And two, I haven't done it for years. And I think actually what I found is people underestimate, firstly, the value of what you're going to talk about. So Jay, I think it's very natural to get nervous. I think unless you're a seasoned professional, I think from when I've spoken to people, because I've done a lot of speaking to people about it as well, like I think most people still get nervous, and that might be a good nerves in that they're excited, but it's still quite, I think for most people, it's still quite nerve-wracking. And I think the thing that made me do it and the thing that's given me confidence is like actually, I think people, you've always got something that people are going to want to hear. Even I always think as long as people take away one nugget, they're going to want to hear it. And I think from a voice point of view, from my point of view as well, I'm very much, as long as I've rehearsed it, I'm fine. So, and the other thing I think as well is people want to support you. They want you to do well. I honestly don't think there's going to be anyone in the audience that doesn't want you to do well. So my first talk was actually at Search London, which run by Joe Turnbull. And actually, I'd really recommend their Search London, Search Barcelona, which she runs both of them. And they're great events if you are starting speaking or you want to get more experience, because she welcomes first-time speakers. So from my point of view, that was great because I felt like I was going to a safe space. I think in terms of people, if they want to build their confidence, there's a lot of meetups that are great if you want to just get experience and sort of build up from there. Again, people are welcoming, they want you to do well. And also as well, like normally the person running the event, they'll give you some pointers in terms of, people might want to do this and, maybe think about these questions. I think, just remember it's normal to get nervous, but, people want you to do well. There's always something they're going to want to hear. And I do think it is one of those things that just comes with time. So I think I've done about 5 over the past year, and that's like including Brighton, SEO on the beach. What else have I done? I did a webinar for SE ranking. Honestly, even coming to speak to you guys, I'll be honest,
I get nervous introducing people, so I don't know what it is.
I just said to Chris, I was like, oh my God, I'm so nervous.
We're the nicest people.
You are.
Don't be nervous.
But it's like, I think I'm naturally going to always feel that, because you're like, But one, I think, I don't even know how many people are actually going to watch this. But I think, people are most people are genuinely lovely. They want you to do well. Everyone's got their own story. They've got their own experience. So, So, Jay, do you want to do speaking again?
If that was up, I probably would. But it was one of my. Maybe do it one more time just to say I've done it a few times, but I doubt it would go in this.
It definitely gets easier, but saying that, even I say that every time I've done it, beforehand I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I here? But I think I feel the nice thing is I feel like I'm a speaker, which is nice. And I say it's only been since October. But I feel I've got my little SEMrush here. Don't know if you can see it.
That's cool.
That's good.
But I keep that on my desk because I'm like, that's really nice, because I'm like, oh, I've done that. And so I think honestly, as I say, I haven't been doing it for that long, but I enjoy it, and I think I just feel good for it as well because it gives me confidence. I think that's the other thing, because I've lacked confidence in my abilities and myself in the past, and I think a lot of people do. We talk about imposter syndrome, and I think that is a thing. I think just honestly, people just, think about what people are going to want to hear, just puts them together. And I do think it's a good thing to do, because once you've done it as well, you do feel so good afterwards. I'll say that.
I'm sure a lot of people will be grateful for that feedback when they're listening to this.
I was going to say, I did feel on an absolute high after the talk. Like I'd never felt like anything like it before. Like it was.
I think I went straight for a pint after, like straight away. It's like, ooh.
Is that no? Yeah, after SEO on the beach, I just had shots because I was like,
I can't remember anything an hour after that.
No, it was great nights. And Shreya, have you done any speaking?
Sorry?
Have you done any speaking?
So I actually grew up doing acting and speech and drama and that sort of fun stuff. And I did like a Dale tracker. And yeah, like, so I've done a few commercials and stuff like that. So public speaking wasn't too much of a thing for me. But one thing that I do recommend that helps a lot of people is I did this course called the Dale Carnegie course in high school, but like they do it for everyone, from businesses to team building to whatever age as well. They alter the course and stuff. And I think for me, it was the best thing to kind of like skyrocket your ability to, I guess, public speak and also network, especially if you have like social anxiety or imposter syndrome and stuff like that. That was something that definitely helped break through a lot of people's sort of barriers. And it's like a short course as well. So yeah, that was something that's
very good.
Yeah. Darius, did you have a question? Do you want to go first?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I know you mentioned a lot, you talked about working with a lot of agencies and obviously different processes within those different agencies. Is there any sort of key processes that you go in and think, oh, these guys are failing to implement that? Is there one that sort of stands out across a number of agencies, or are they all sort of slightly different?
I think yeah, they are slightly different, but I do think there's still like core areas that tend to need refining. So it does tend to be around how they're managing workflows. So, and that would be related to software that people are using, and I do come back to that because I do think they are great, because nowadays you've got things like a lot of automations, you've got integrations in there. So it does automate a lot of things for you. And now even AI, so everyone's talking about it. But even in ClickUp, for example, you've now got AI tools. So, and I don't think, the thing is as well, I always think with the AI stuff, it's great, it's on trend, it helps you do stuff quicker, but it still doesn't replace the thinking. That's true not just from a perspective, but I do also think from a delivery, because you still need to be thinking about, what do we need to be prioritizing, what's most important, what's going to benefit the client. So I think this is the other thing as well, like the stuff I do actually overlaps. I do have to have a lot of conversations with account managers and with the leadership team, because it's like, actually, what do we need to prioritize? So yeah, I think when it comes to what they need to sort out, is normally around the delivery process, around team communications as well, and particularly relevant now because so many teams are either hybrid or remote. There's not many teams now that are actually in the office day to day 5 times a week. Which is it's got benefits and drawbacks. But I think that's where, from a comms perspective, it becomes more important to make sure, as I say, with things like daily stand-ups, like making sure like people have a regular set time every day and catch up. They've got that face-to-face contact as well. So having your camera on is really important. Because actually, I think having a good team dynamic, that's going to impact, your day-to-day working as well. And that's why actually I'm going off a bit track now, but with operations, I always think it's such a broad role, because when someone asks like, what do you do? And I'm like, well, I do. I mean, I've got the practice.
Everything.
Yeah. And I think because I think with operations as well, you need to be thinking about team satisfaction, like what's going to drive people, how are you going to keep people engaged? So yes, you've got to focus on the delivery day to day, but how do you make sure people are happy? How do you make sure they're going to get the most out of their job? Because people are only going to do their best work if they're happy. So it's thinking about that as well. And then, comms perspective, things like if you're from a delivery point of view, you can't just give someone a brief and like, see ya, good luck. It's depending on what the task is. You need to think about how detailed does that need to be? Do we have to have check-in meetings? And you can't be like, yeah, here it is, it's due on this day. If that person, for example, hasn't done it before, you need to check in with them, make sure things are on track. If they're not, time to bring it back on track. And then from a leadership perspective, monitoring profitability. Again, that's something that would be sitting with the leadership team, but it's understanding, we talk about gross and net profit, but just broadly speaking, where is our time going? Where's the money being spent? Are we profitable? What is profitable? What isn't? Because also that's the reason a lot of people run an agency. So they might be, as I say, they might be getting work out, everyone's happy, but are you still making a profit? Because actually in the long run, that's an important thing as well. So it's very, in terms of, I would say in terms of where the issues are, they will differ across agency, and then you'll probably, but I think everything normally needs a bit of focus, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I don't want to out Chris, but was there any sort of processes or operations that whenever you came into OMG.center, you sort of changed straight away?
The first thing I said to Chris on my first day working with him, because he had ClickUp in place. He's great at what he does. As I say, he does a hell of a lot. And I was like, I am very impressed by how much you've done, given what I'm seeing in front of me. So I think he was following the process in terms of having a system. But the thing is, this is the other thing as well. If you're leading a team, you've got limited resource, you've got limited time, and this is where you need to understand what is it. The point of bringing me is that's my skill set, that's my strong point. He's great at all this other stuff, but actually being able to keep on top of the detail and get things structured, it's not that you can't do it, you can't really resource the time to do it. It was trying to basically get everything systematized, automated, make sure the team knew what they were doing, and make sure Chris knew what he was doing. And again, that's not a criticism, that's more I think that happens a lot in agencies. Especially if you're running a small agency, often the person who's founded it, they're often the leader and they're trying to do a lot. So and Chris is very fast paced as well, so I could imagine trying to pick up the pieces as you go along. And you've seen the great thing is done such a good job from a social perspective. There's so much going on. There's so many different channels, and it's trying to keep on top of that. So my first thing was just trying to get everything organised and then planning. So
definitely. Vicky, you were reading my mind when you spoke about communication and motivating a team. I was like, are you leading my next question? So I just wanted to cover quickly. Has there been a scenario where there was miscommunication about a project or any sort of important information? And at what points did you realize that there was miscommunication, and how did you sort of manage that? And I guess you kind of sort of half answered it, but how do you safeguard against that as well? Okay.
I think this is where it's comes back to the process point of view, because you can't be in every meeting, you can't speak to every client, you can't be in every team meeting. So it's putting those processes in place to understand, if there's an action, this is how it's captured. I'm just trying to think of an example. I think what I have found is when things were supposed to be delivered and they just weren't.
Wow, fun.
Actually, why did that happen? And it's the process wasn't followed. We didn't, we've got an automation where, for example, if the client, is having this type of project, we need to follow these different steps. And that wasn't done. So sorry, that's a very, very broad answer, but it is, I think for me, it's more about, it normally comes back to a process thing, and that's the other thing, because stuff like that will happen, things will get missed, balls will get dropped. Hopefully over time that's less and less. But we need to make sure if that does happen, we go back to it and be like, well, why did that happen? And again, actually a big thing about what ops is accountability. So we can have as many processes in place as we want to keep things on track, but we also need to make sure people are accountable for what they're doing. So it's understanding, again, how do we engender that from a process point of view, but also a team perspective, because we want people to be invested and, want it to work. So.
And do you ever find that you sort of like are struggling with a balance between motivating and holding accountable the team? Or is that sort of, does it go hand in hand for you?
Yeah, I think it does sort of have to go hand in hand, I think, because we have to, for a team to work, it's a bit of a broad answer again, but I think for a team to work, you have to all have, everyone has to be bought into the vision of whatever the agency, what the mission is. So we need to have, people are going to be different, but we all need to be aligned in terms of what our values are, for example.
Yeah.
And that comes down as well to a hiring process, which again is another conversation. But yeah, it is. I've forgotten the question now, but yeah, it's about keeping everyone aligned with that vision, everyone invested, because I think with that, if you've got the right people, you've got the right motivation, people are naturally going to be more accountable. Yeah, so those two things definitely tie together.
Awesome. And yeah, we just wanted to round off with a positive question, forward, future moving. Can you tell us a little bit about the upcoming event, how it's going, and a little bit of a teaser about
trailer
it? We're in the process of finalising some details now. But yeah, we'll be showing it over the next couple of weeks, obviously in line with the new website launch. But yeah, it's going to be in Manchester on Thursday, the 19th of October, from 6 p.m. onwards. In terms of like the structure of the events, there'll be a lot of networking. We will have some, like, most likely we're going to do like a live podcast, very short talks. But I mean, that sort of thing will be mainly like half an hour. So we want to keep it really focused. The main thing is going to be around, there's going to be lots of great agency people there, lots of great people who work with agencies, such as yourselves, hopefully, if you're coming. Yeah, reserve the date.
Definitely.
Yeah, there'll be drink, food, as I say, networking. There's going to be our dogs there as well, which is a really important point.
selling points.
Cute dogs, they'll be there. But yeah, so yeah, please keep it free. But we're really excited because it'll be genuinely a great opportunity for us to, obviously make sure everyone knows the OMG.center, they know who we're working with, what we do, but then also just allow people to network and get to know each other, which is the main thing. We're people business, so yeah.
Brilliant. Exciting times ahead.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very exciting, and I think it's important as well, especially for the all of us that work behind screens, to just get out and meet people as well. So thank you for the initiatives, and yeah, also thank you for coming on today and chatting. We quite interested in your insights and your work experience as well. It's just been quite interesting to dig a little deeper into your backstory and the OMG.center as well. So thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, sure. I know you're very busy.
Yeah, that's good.
And yeah, all the best for the website and the event, and we will definitely be sharing it and letting people know, and hopefully be there as well. Yeah, awesome. Thank you for joining.
Excellent.
Have a good weekend,
Thank you so much, and you take care, guys.
Bye bye.